I'm going to start it, and so then I can come introduce you. Okay, so welcome to our small but mighty group with the people who are not sick right now. This is our Noyce Professional Development Workshop. We hold 4 of these a year as one of the ways that we support our Noyce scholars. So I'm Dee Dee Wright. I'm our grant coordinator.
I'm Laura Sample McMeeking. I'm the Associate Director of the STEM Center here at CSU, and I'm a researcher on the Noyce project.
Yep. And our PI on the project, Dr. Amina Bhagopal, is on sabbatical this semester. So she is in India doing some work, but she will be back next semester. And so I'm going to let other people introduce themselves as well. So Janet.
Yeah, I'm Janet. I'm one of the mentors for math. And I work at Colorado State University.
My name is Tanti. I'm a third-year math education student.
And so, Tantu, tell them where you just were a couple weekends ago.
I was in Arizona for a Noyce Western Regional Noyce Conference. So a bunch of math and science teachers come together. It was great.
So not only do we provide professional development for our scholars, but all the universities throughout the Western region that have Noyce scholarship programs as well get together and host a conference that provides professional development for scholars and opportunities for project leaders to get together. And so now I'm going to have you introduce yourselves because you are all the people who are applying or looking at it. So go ahead.
My name is Emily Garcia. I went to school for natural resources management and now I'm hoping to get my general science license.
I'm Cal. My pronouns are they, them, and sorry, I know I'm quiet. I'm a double in chemistry and music, and I hope to become a professor. I'm Venus. I'm a third-year mathematics education student. That's it.
Nice. And Mike, if you want to grab a name tag and an agenda, that would be great. So today we're kind of doing something a little bit different than what we normally do. We're having dinner versus just snacks. So Dr. Leslie Cunningham-Sabo is in
Food Science, Human Nutrition.
Thank you. And I'm trying to think how many years ago you put these kids together.
Maybe 5?
Yeah, I want to say it was like about 5 years ago. At the time, I was working for the school district as the science curriculum facilitator, but I also covered health. And as a school district, we had gotten some grant money from the Colorado Department of Education to implement more health curriculum in our schools. And Leslie had been doing some of these kids as an after-school program at a couple of our elementary schools. And so I had approached her with, well, what if we developed as a kit that could go out to all the different schools? And so we put 4 kits together, one citrus tasting, and one was apple tasting. And we're going to have a chance to look at the apple tasting tonight and try different types of apples. And then there was black bean tostadas, and then Chinese American fried rice, which is the one we are going to be drinking tonight. So I asked Leslie to come and be able to talk to you about the kids and community nutrition and how, what we will do during that is how can that be incorporated into what you are thinking of teaching. And one of the things that I'd like you to do, if you notice on the back of your agenda, one of the things that we're really big about is what kinds of connections can you make to whatever our guest speaker is talking about. And so in these boxes, you can just jot down bullet point ideas, or if you like to write in complete sentences, however you like to write, what are connections that you are personally making while Leslie is talking, and then also that'll spill over into while we're doing the actual cooking. And I also want Mike to go ahead and introduce himself.
I'm Mike Viney, retired teacher from Hoosier School District.
And so this is another mentor. So when we divide up into our groups, I'm going to divide you guys up as well, so that you have a chance to work with one of our teacher experts. All right,
Cool.
Leslie, are you all
All
set?
right, I'm ready.
Okay.
And I want to acknowledge Mina Balkapal because she was on a grant that I wrote, or we wrote, and along with others, to U.S. Department of Agriculture. And we got money to develop a multi-component school-based intervention trying to prevent childhood obesity, but from a health and wellness perspective. So we got kids involved in physical activity, as well as we did a cafeteria component, improving the quality of the school meals. We did family components, some getting the families involved, but at the heart of it was something called Cooking with Kids. And we modified a curriculum that I was partnering with some colleagues in New Mexico. And then when I moved here for my dream job as a faculty member in food science and human nutrition, I brought the curriculum with me, and we adapted the curriculum all of, to better address Colorado academic standards. Now, I worked with 4th grade, so I know you're working in middle school and high school. Those are your goals, and you're working with science and math. And so one of the things I hope to do and have you do some connecting here is how what I'm telling you about working with 4th graders might apply to what you'll be doing as a teacher. And so I'm liking to see all of this because I'm hitting on much of this, although social justice and place, location, relevance may be a bit of a stretch, but I think that's a good thing because teachers are nothing if not adaptable, right? So why do you think, let's think about cooking for a minute, and how many of you enjoy cooking? Okay, most of you do, but some of you don't, and that's reality. One of the things that has happened over the last couple of decades, and perhaps because we have 2-parent families, both are working, there is not a parent at home typically. Sometimes we have single-parent households. Parents are working more and more, and so cooking is less of an activity that families are finding time to do. The cooking shows, the cooking network has really grown. People are really enjoying watching cooking programs, but it doesn't translate into behavior at home, okay? And at the same time we're having a decline in home cooking, we're having a rise in childhood obesity, and perhaps obesity in general. Now, it's not a direct correlation, but I would argue that there are some associations. And we do know from the research that home cooking and cooking skills are related to diet quality. So the more people cook at home, the healthier their diets are. And I know from my experience, I've been working with kids and cooking, I don't even want to say how long it's been, but it's been probably 15 or more years. And again, working at the elementary level, which I know is a different situation than middle and high school. But I do know that children who are engaged in cooking become more adventurous eaters. And I guess one of the things that I really want to reinforce is it's called the IKEA effect. I made it, so I really like it. And I think the ownership, I don't want us to discount the importance of children, of students being involved in something and taking ownership and then becoming more adventurous in eating or more willing to try something because they've been involved in it. Think about when you were in elementary school and, school lunch, and it was just kind of plopped on your tray, and it was sort of mystery. You didn't even know what it was or where it came from. And so the idea behind cooking with kids is really getting kids engaged in this very important life skill. And students come home excited about the meals that they made, excited they want to go shopping for those ingredients with their family. And so included in the curriculum, and Dee Dee, I'm happy to leave this with you for a while and you guys can take a look at it because there's lots more in here than I'm going to be able to talk about. One of the things we do, maybe place-based here, if I'm understanding that right, in our tasting lessons, we have letters from farmers in Colorado about, so we've got a farmer letter for apple tasting with a farm family on the western slope growing different varieties of apples. And they talk about the science behind growing apples and the importance of the environment, the air temperature, the amount of water, the soil contents, etc., to grow really good apples and how that is different variety to variety. Okay, let's see. So connecting healthy cooking, and we really emphasize fruits and vegetables because we know that kids typically don't eat the amount recommended, okay? So that's why we really focus on fruits and vegetables, and I would say especially more so with vegetables. Okay, I'm getting some connections, personal connections here maybe. So thinking about the health connections to the academic connections of how can you engage, how can you involve cooking in your classroom, in your content area, in your subject area. And I want to challenge you because it's really possible, and kids love food. Now Dee Dee and I can tell you how complicated it is for a teacher to get cooking into the classroom by him or herself. And I think we spent a year trying to figure out how to reimburse teachers for the fresh produce, the fresh foods that are necessary. These kits that she talked about have all of some of the dry ingredients, but all of the equipment, and they have the recipes, and they have all sorts of things, utensils, some spices, but they don't have the fresh ingredients. So it can be a challenge because you know, as teachers aren't going to make a whole lot of money. You're going to spend out of your pocket anyway. So how do you engage in partnerships to get that happening? Also, let's say you've got a class, how many students is typical in a middle or high school classroom, would you say?
Well, it depends. So in the science classes that I had at the middle school that I was at the end of my career, it was usually around 30. But then I had a math intervention class that was specifically, capped at like 15. And we actually did some cooking in that class.
Great.
And so I can share a little bit more about that. But around here in this district, a lot of people would, you'd expect to have 30, 35.
Okay.
Mine were like ranging from 36 to 39.
Yeah.
So can you imagine by yourself trying to do some cooking activities with 35 students? And you're going to do some chopping, so that means there's going to be some sharp objects. You worry about food safety. So partnerships with others, I think, is going to be really important. Now, in the health world, a couple of ideas here. In the health world, there are, I'm doing community nutrition. So working in schools is community nutrition as opposed to in a hospital or in a clinic. There are people in your county, in your community, that they're expected to do cooking education or nutrition education. So one of the things is that if your school is a public school and your school has a cafeteria program that provides breakfast and lunch to the students, they're getting reimbursed for those meals. Sometimes parents will pay a portion of that, but especially for low-income students, they're going to get the meal for free. Now, the school district doesn't pay for that, okay? These cafeteria programs have to be self-sustaining in that they prepare food and get reimbursed from the U.S. Department of Agriculture. So the National School Lunch and Breakfast Programs, the school food service department is reimbursed. for the meals that are served. And I think they get a whopping, $2.35 for each lunch. So you can imagine it's a real challenge. So be sympathetic, supportive, and respectful to the people that are in the cafeteria, because they have a really tough job. But as part of them getting reimbursed for those meals, they obviously have to follow certain guidelines, safety guidelines, nutrition guidelines. But they also, the districts need to have a school wellness program. They need to have a district coordinator of school wellness, and each school needs to have a school wellness person, a coordinator. Could be school nurse, could be a teacher who's really motivated. So I would say that's one partnership you want to make, is connect with that school wellness person at your school level, but also at the district level. They'll have ideas for resources and people outside of the school district who want to come in and help you. So you're not going to do this by yourself, I would argue, especially when you're a beginning teacher. And I don't know how soon you get to have a student teacher, but even so, that can be a challenge. So encourage other people to get involved.
And doing some of these lessons is a great way if you have parents who said, if you ever need anything, just let me know.
Right.
Be like,
So
hey,
getting
I
parent
need an extra
involvement.
body in the classroom.
Now you really, like with everything as a teacher, you need to be very well prepared. You need to make sure that you have the equipment you need, the foods you need. Think about food safety, school safety. Are there any food allergies among the kids? That's going to influence what we serve. How are we going to address somebody who's gluten-free? Or any of these recipes do not have peanuts in them, because that is a pretty high allergen and can be very serious. But you will need to know about food allergies. So now let's connect to, and I could talk about this forever, so I'm going to wrap this up. But now let's talk about the connection of cooking and nutrition to academic standards. An easy one is health education, okay, which you guys technically are not involved with, but health is so important that I would encourage you to connect your science and math academic standards to health in some way, at least in part. Food is really popular with kids, okay, so they're going to already be enthusiastic. The fact that they're cooking or developing foods to taste in the classroom is often non-traditional teaching practice, so they're going to be really excited about that too. I would say that your students who are not the strongest academically could be a valuable leader in their small group. Maybe they're not reading the recipe, but they may be very gifted in getting people organized and coordinating the activities. I've seen that over and over and over again. As far as behavior goes, if kids want to be a part of this, they can regulate their behavior. And now I don't know about middle and high school, there may be other issues then, but I know I've seen it in elementary schools where kids who maybe often act out are so motivated to be a part of this that they can do some self-regulation to be a part of this. But I want to come back to the idea of integrating this into your academic standards. So let's think about reading a recipe and following a recipe. How could you connect that to your math academic standards, for example? Yes.
Well, in the class that we taught, we actually purposely combined it with fractions, so that what we would do is we would let kids pick out particular recipes, but then we would determine how they would have to change the recipe, so they would have to go through and change the amounts of all the ingredients.
Right, so if your recipe says that it's going to serve 10, and you've got a class of 30, how are you going to convert the fractions so that you have enough for everybody? Okay. Even your measuring cups and spoons relate to fractions. A quarter teaspoon, for example, a third of a cup, gives you that hands-on practical application of these concepts that can be kind of abstract.
We're
Okay,
also talking about proportions.
right? Portion sizes as well.
And change, if you're changing from the original recipe to scaling down or scaling up, you're talking about a proportion of the original recipe, either up or down, and trying to convert that way.
Right, right. How about science? Some of you are in science as well.
Another thing that I found out is that, it was important for them to, know how much time they had and plan out the steps, because sometimes we had to figure out, could we take this recipe and prepare something that could then be refrigerated overnight and then come back and finish it the next day. And it was interesting too to see how many kids thought that they could take all the ingredients and just throw them together and that it would work. And so that was another important lesson.
So it's all about planning,
Yeah.
planning things out, and you think about, I don't know, I call them 21st century skills. It's working in a group, but it's also that higher level of planning things out. You don't have, some of these cooking activities, now it won't take you 2 hours, there's lots of other things that get incorporated into this. So the cooking activity is not 2 hours, but we had the luxury for a while, when we were in a classroom, in an elementary classroom, we had a 2-hour block of time. So we could do everything all at once, and the recipes are designed, so for example, it's quick cooking brown rice. It's not, so we had to adapt things to make it within that time frame, but especially at a middle or elementary school level, you'd have how much time for a classroom?
Well, usually the classes were 90 minutes, but these intervention classes were half that time.
Yeah.
So it presented a great challenge. And then we also had to cook in a specific area of the school. So we always had to negotiate with other people who might want to be using that space. Another thing that was important is that there was a lot of equipment there, and some of the equipment belonged to the school, and some of the equipment belonged to other teachers personally. And a couple times we used things, and then we got notes saying, hey, those are my pans, and you cannot use those, because then we'd also have to figure out what did cleanup look like. So sometimes we would get things soaking and some of us would have to come back at another time, like after school, and finish up the cleanup. And so you have to think of the community that you're a part of and be respectful, like you said.
And it's really important for the students to take ownership and responsibility. So related to food science is sanitation. So we have everybody wash their hands first. And cleanup is a really important part of that as well. We had some kids so enjoy washing the dishes, but they'd say, oops, sorry, that's my phone. Don't tell my mom that I like washing dishes.
One of the other activities that, like, even as I was out purchasing food, is just looking at the cost of what things are. So like with the apple tasting, you can say, okay, well, so I get one apple and it always tells me it is, $1.98 per pound. Well, an average apple, I weighed one out and was like, the apples I got were about half a pound each. So if I know how many people I want to serve, how many apples do I need, you can look at what is the cost per serving per person, or what is the total cost. And so there's a lot of math I felt that could be done in there. And when I think about science, you're also saying, like in science, if you're going to do an experiment that requires materials, well, how much of each material do you need? And what might be the cost of doing that?
And the other thing with
Experiment.
science is really the change in the food item with applying heat or water. And so that's another area that you can really think about as well. And how, and then that dry rice, maybe you use a quarter cup, but then when you cook it in water, it expands in volume. And so just really thinking about those things. And let me just say a few other things.
Well, I just want to go back
Oh,
to
yeah.
the standards. So when I had first brought these kits to our teachers, and they were elementary teachers, they're like, how do we like justify this as part of what we want to do in our classroom? Like, so even when we got them and figured out how do teachers get reimbursed for the food, it was then actually getting teachers to use them. So we held professional development and had teachers cook the meals there so they, could see it in action. And then, like, we did this. So we said, here's how it connects to your different standards. So if someone should ask you, why are you cooking Chinese American fried rice? Why are you tasting apples? Like, I thought you're supposed to be doing science or math or language arts. They had reasons like, here's how it connects to those other places. And I will tell you, like, when I finally got a group of teachers at one elementary school to check out a kit, they checked out Chinese American fried rice. And when we start cooking, especially like when the ginger starts cooking, it's very aromatic. And it just so happened that the Board of Education was visiting their school that day and was down the hall. And what this teacher told me is like, all of a sudden, all these board members come running into her classroom, which she was not expecting, right? Like, she was not on their scheduled visit. And they were like, we had to come and see what you're doing because it smells so delicious. And like, why are you doing this? And she had all these answers. And the board was like, this is what we need going on in our schools. And now it is actually very difficult to find a time to get the kits. Because originally I wanted to do the black bean tostadas with you because you get to like pound out your own tortillas, right? And that kit was not available for any time in the next 3 months. So that's why we got Chinese American fried rice, which is also very delicious.
Yeah.
But you don't get to pound out a tortilla.
So that's awesome. I'm so delighted to hear that. I know Mina's going to be delighted to hear that as well. But it's a real challenge to get health into and justify that, in a math and science class. Students may have one health class. There are some family consumer science classes where there is some cooking, pizza, brownies, not the greatest stuff. And so,
usually that's by choice. So not usually those are elective type classes,
Right,
so
yeah,
not every
exactly.
student will
Not every-
choose to take that type of class.
So I will say that, getting back to the, so sorry, my phone never rings, so I don't know.
It always happens
I
when you're
know.
speaking in front of a group.
I probably hit the, answer it instead of the, anyway, I'm so sorry. So I think that we've addressed Colorado academic standards, but in our case, social studies, mathematics, language arts, certainly science as well, but justifying that to gain acceptance. And teachers, once you have one teacher doing it, then there's a ripple effect because they will encourage each other. This is how I did it and I made it happen. We've had, with extras, they'll take it down to the principal, so in the office staff, so there's, again, more reinforcement of how positive it is. I want to get you guys cooking. One thing, though, that I want to add is that you've got social justice as part of your group, and I think there's, I don't think it's a stretch to recognize that our limited resource audiences oftentimes are food insecure. And sometimes there's this paradox where obesity is higher in some of our limited resource audiences along with food insecurity. And again, I could spend an hour talking to you about that. But one of the things that we've done, and this may be a resource for you depending on where you are, there's a program out of our department called the Expanded Food and Nutrition Education Program, FNEP. And they work with limited resource audiences and do provide some programming for high schools. And so that may be an opportunity. They target pregnant teenage moms, but there's a big focus on cooking and nutrition. So anyway, I wanted to say that. Dee Dee, is there anything else that you think is important?
I was just going to say, there are also, like, if there are CSU students that are experiencing food insecurity, there are programs on campus to supply fresh fruit and vegetables and food for them as well.
So I think gonna have, since Dee Dee's done more of this before I have, I think she's gonna, or more recently than I have, I think she's gonna give some direction, but we're gonna get you paired up with a mentor, and we're gonna get you cooking. But the first thing I want you to do is wash your hands. Looks like there's a couple of sinks, but that's really important. So get up and wash your hands, and then we'll get started.
And when you wash your hands, scholars, you guys need to split up. One of you goes with Laura, one with Mike, one with Janet, and then our potential scholars, you pair up with them. All right?
And I'm just gonna go do that.
Yes.
How was your flight? Still
It's good. Sorry.
No, it's fine, just at the end.
I got the extra. You know, the soap and the sinks are a lot better in the restrooms right here.
All right, and this one has,
Although there's a little bit of soap
there's a
there.
little soap
You just have to
here.
be careful because those are pressure sinks.
Yeah. Just, you know, yeah, you can also use the,
Yeah, I think I might go to
yeah.
thinking.
Yeah, these are,
Miss A,
they'll be fine for cleaning stuff off.